بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا وقدوتنا محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وأزكى التسليم اللهم علمنا بما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. So today we have another new and exciting lesson. Previously, we had learned about prepositions. Okay, prepositions, we're using them currently as a foil or as an added wrinkle in our jumla ismiya, in our sentence that begin with ism. And so all of our examples have been with al-kitabu, starting with an ism, ala al-maktabi, for example. And we learned previously ala, the preposition which means on or on top of, and fi, which primarily means in or inside. And as we said, prepositions are much more flexible in the Arabic language than in English. So you'll find that fi has several meanings. In classical Arabic, it can mean, I won't go into it, but just know, put it in the back of your head, save it for a rainy day, that prepositions are more flexible in Arabic than they are in English. So they can have multiple meanings. But these are the primary meanings, especially in everyday speech. So today, we are going to proceed to learn two more prepositions. And we're going to use them in the same exact way, which is as the khabar, or the predicate of a jumla ismiya, of a sentence that begins with an ism. But we're also going to use them in a novel way. We're going to use them as part of a verbal sentence. Today we're going to get our first taste of verbs and how to construct a sentence that begins not with an ism, but with a fi'l. And we're going to learn some vocab. Actually, after this, we have a nice little conversation. So it doesn't seem like there's too many live participants today, but whoever's here can take part in the conversation, inshallah. And if we need, I can step in too. So the new prepositions that we're learning are ila. Careful to distinguish ila. You hear how it quickly releases from the lam. Ila. Distinguish that from illa, like la ilaha illallah, which is a different word entirely, which means accept, right? So ila means to, toward. We're talking about directionality, whether it's in time, but usually in place. And min, which means from. Same thing, directionality, usually in place, but also used with time. As we said, that prepositions in the first place, they're mostly used to communicate the relationship between two things. How close is it? How far away is it? Where is it in relative location to the other thing? And so on and so forth. Oh, good. Here comes the shahada. So those are our goals for today. Those prepositions, working them out, seeing the ways in which we can use them, where they can pop up in sentences, intro to verbs, and our first taste of the verbal sentence. Okay, I'll get into that in a second. Let's just go to the book and we'll do the exercises, and then I will circle back to the slides to break it down, inshallah. So I need 2 volunteers. To be, I need a mudarris or a mudarrisa, as the case may be, and I need someone to play Muhammad. Who are my first 2 volunteers?
Sure, we can go.
Okay, you two? Okay, good. So Sister Syra and Brother Muslim, one of you be the mudarris and the other one be Muhammad, and you're going to read this entire page is a conversation. I'm going to stop you at different places to point out vocab. We will talk about the grammar after you've completed the entire conversation. Okay? Go ahead.
Oh boy. Okay.
All right, don't worry.
Min.
And sorry to interrupt you. Mistakes are the path to learning, right? Mistakes are not the path to learning. We want the mistakes. Whoever makes the most mistakes learns the most.
All right. Min aina anta.
Excellent. Now, this has one word that we have not learned up until now, and that is the word enta. Enta is a pronoun. So previously we had learned huwa for he, hiya for her, and now for he and she, and enta means you. So Sister Syra, if you were to translate that sentence, what would you translate it as? Or I should say question.
Yeah. Where are you from?
Yes, exactly. Excellent work. Min aina anta. Where are you from? Literally, from where are you? But in English, say, where are you from? Great. What's the response?
Ana minal Yabani.
Excellent. Very good. So, ana is another pronoun we have not learned up until now. Just as enta means you, ana means I.
Ana.
You could please try to oh yeah, and obviously Al-Yaban, here we have a nice beautiful picture. Al-Yaban is Japan. So now we can tell that this conversation, we're going to be talking about where people are from. And Muhsin did an excellent job of throwing that kasra on underneath of Yaban because it's after min. Min is a preposition. And so the ism after it is going to be majroor with a kasra. So what does this sentence mean?
I'm from Japan.
Excellent work. Very good. So now we have a formula. Min aina anta. Where are you from? Ana min. I am from. Ana min al-Yabani. Good. Keep going.
Wa min ana amarun.
Very good.
Amarun.
Excellent. So if enta was you, now we've substituted a proper name. So the sentence means, or the question is, and where is Ammar from? So now we're asking about where a third person is from. Go ahead.
Huwa minas sini. Huwa minas sini.
Excellent. A scene is China. A scene.
Oh.
We say in English like Sino, right, is a root that we often use to talk about things from China. So I think it probably comes from the same root. Very good.
Wa min ana hamidun.
Wa min aina hamidun. Yep.
Hamidun.
Huwa minal Hind. Huwa minal Hindi.
Excellent. Very good. And as you could probably guess, Al-Hind is India. Okay, I'm going to have to move this down and erase these. I hope everybody got the vocab. So now the second half of the conversation. Keep going.
Aina Abbasun.
Good. And what does that mean? Could you translate that for us?
Where's Abbas?
Yes. And the response?
Kharaja.
Excellent. This is our first verb. And it means he left. We will talk about the structure of verbs after we get through this conversation. Go ahead and continue.
Ana zahaba.
Very good. Dhahaba is our second.
Okay.
Good. ذهب is our second verb. It means he went. In English, we would translate this as where did he go? Where did he go? He left. Where did he go? Go ahead.
ذهب إلى المدير.
Excellent. The al-mudir is usually the principal, we would say. Or is it principal? There we go. Homophones. Okay, continue.
وأنا ذهب علي
Great. Yes.
ذهب إلى المرحاض.
Excellent. And we had learned mirhad last class, which al-mirhad literally means the toilet, right? So if you want to be a little more explicit as to he's gone to the bathroom or the washroom if you're from Canada, then that's what you would say. ذهب إلى المرحاض. Excellent work. Very, very good. You guys did a great job reading everything. Is everybody caught the new words, the vocab? I'll say this, has anybody not written down the new words? Okay, I'm going to assume you have them. And now we're going to talk about the structure of a verb. So, there are 3 types of verbs. Great question. Are countries always definite? Yes, I believe so. Now, not all countries are preceded by alif lam. That's a separate issue. Some, for example, like America, which is shorthand for Al-Walayat Al-Muttahida Al-Amrikiya, the United States of America, but over there they say America, America, even though there's many Americas, North America, South America, Central America. They say America to mean the United States most often. And even though it does not have alif lam, it is definite because it is a known specific country, just like a known specific name, like Muhammad. There are other countries that are also definite, and in addition to be definite in meaning, they also have the alif lam, like Al-Hind, As-Sin, remember our sun and moon letters, As-Sudan. And this is the same thing that we have in English, right? And even in English, there are countries that we refer to with the, like the Netherlands, right? So literally, this is the Sudan and the Hind, but even without the alif lam, country names are always definite. Good question. So let's look at our verbs, okay? Is it ana or aina? We had both of them in that lesson. So we had ana, which was I. That's written with a hamzat al-qata' and a noon, and this placeholder alif, which actually is a silent letter. And then we have aina, which is hamza on top of an alif, ya with a sukoon, and then a noon with a fatha. So this is I, and this is where. So country names without al still have only a single haraka, not double. America, we have, I would need to check on that because, and that's a really, really good question. Because, for example, proper names, such as Muhammad, have tanween, right? Muhammadun, if they're masculine, not if they're feminine. So through that rule, it's not necessarily that a country name, even if it didn't have alif lam, would have just a single harakah. However, there are specific rules for foreign words, right? So we were talking just last class about introducing the concept of mamnu' min as-sarf. There are certain words that are foreign to the Arabic tongue. Or I should back up. Mamnu' min as-sarf is a group of words that, for whatever reason, or for many multiple reasons, they never have a tanween or a kasra. Okay? Some words that are foreign words come under this category of mamnu' min as-sarf, which means that it will never get a tanween, even if it is definite. As for, I'm not confident enough to say that every single country name only has one character or one harakah at the end and no tanween. Off the top of my head, that sounds correct. But Libya, Misr. But I can't say with confidence that every single country is like that. That's a good question. The question would be, it would have to be a name of a country that is an Arabic word or understood in Arabic. It's not a foreign word. That does not have alif lam attached to it. That would be our case that would answer your question. If we can identify one of those such countries, then we would find out the answer. Okay, so that's good. I have some research to do. Looking at our verbs. Our first verb was kharaja. Okay, there's the big old kha, ra, ja. Okay. In the Arabic language, there are 3 types of verbs. The first type of verb is the past tense. We learn verbs starting with the past tense in Arabic, not the present tense. Why is that? It has to do with which one is derived from the other. So in English, you achieve the past tense, usually, by adding on a suffix in order to make the past tense, which makes the present tense the default, right? If I say, I walk, in order to make it past tense, then I have to add something to it. I walked, right? ED. It's the opposite in Arabic. The base form, the default form, is the past tense verb, and we add things to it to achieve the present tense. Okay, so that's why we're going to start with past tense verbs. They are the basis of all other verbs. The second we have is present tense. And the last we have is not the future, because the future in English is, the future in Arabic, like English, is achieved with a particle similar to will and not with its own independent form. We have the imperative, mood, which isn't really a tense, but that's okay. It has a separate conjugation. So types of verbs in Arabic are, there's 3 of them. Past tense, present tense, imperative. We're only going to be looking at these for the time being. Those are the most important to get down. When we began talking about the ism, we said that all asma, which is the plural of ism, all nouns or all words that fit into the category of ism, you could divide them into 2 categories, depending on Did they change their endings to show grammar or not? We call these two categories mabni and mu'rab. Okay? Mu'rab basically means that, yes, it's declinable. It's going to change its ending to show grammar. So we have al-baytu, min al-bayti, and if we made it the object of a verb, al-bayta, which we'll see today if we get to it. Okay. There were other isms, if you pardon my Engelbic, that were mabni, like hada. Remember we first learned the word hada. Hada is not going to change, ever. Whether it's the subject, whether it's the predicate, whether it's the doer of a verb, the receiver of a verb, it's always hada. It's never going to change. And so that type of word is called mabni. So if we have a house and the house is Arabic types of words, the first room we go into is the room of ism. The default is that ism is mu'rab. That's the default. And there are exceptions, okay, that are mabni. In verbs, it's the opposite. It is the opposite. That means that the default is that verbs, the fi'l, is mabni, meaning this ending here is not going to change to reflect grammar. Absolutely not. And the exceptions are mu'rab. And I'll spill the beans right now for those who are curious. The only ones that are mu'rab are the present tense verbs. Imperative and past are both mabni. Okay, so you don't have to worry about changing the ending. All this to tell you that if I'm reading Arabic and I see something that's only 3 letters long and it looks like it's probably a verb, how do I know how to pronounce it or not if I don't have these things written on? Well, I'm going to tell you right now that this is always going to be there. It's fixed. If we're using the passive voice, which we're not going to talk about the active voice. Did I say passive? The active voice. We're not going to talk about the passive voice until way down the road. This is fixed. It's not going to change. So your only question mark is the middle one. The middle one can be a fatha, it can be a kasra, it can be a dhamma. It doesn't have anything to do with grammar. It has to do with the word itself, vocabulary. So you have learned that kharaja and dhahaba both have a fatha as the middle letter or the middle vowel. There are other verbs that have a dhamma in the middle. There are other verbs that have a kasra in the middle. However, this is always going to be fatha and this is always going to be fatha. So if we number them 1, 2, 3, 1 and 3 are fixed. They are fixed. And 2 is not. But there's only 3 possibilities. Okay? Good. So kharaja means he left. Our basic, most simple verb form is not just the past tense, but the past tense conjugated for third person singular masculine. What is that? I'm saying he, right? The verb will not change its ending according to grammar, but it will change its ending according to who's doing the verb, which is called conjugation. We're not going to learn any conjugation right now. We're going to learn that bit by bit. But the default shortest verb to make, and therefore the basis that all other knowledge of our verbs is going to be based off of, is this. He did past tense verb. He left or he went. Say it's the Sayyid family has an excellent question. So we cannot say huwa kharaja. Correct. Huwa kharaja is not Arabic. No. Nobody will say huwa kharaja. Kharaja is enough. To say huwa kharaja is redundant. It would be like saying he himself, he went. Which you could in very, very, very limited circumstances say, but if that's the way your default talking, you would be looked at and identified as a non-native speaker, right? We're going to get into that. Your question from the Sayyid family actually is a perfect yes. خلق الله الأرض. خلق الله الأرض. Excellent example. We're going to get into that right now. So the Sayyid family's question leads us into a perfect segue into how to construct a verbal sentence. It is not like a jumla ismiya. Just a quick, very brief note here. The second verb that we learned, ذهب, he went. Notice it's in the same form. It's past tense. It's he, past tense. This is always going to be fatha. This is always going to be fatha. And this, in this particular word, ذهب, is going to be fatha. But it could have been something else if it were another word, like jalisa, to sit, or kabura, to get bigger, right? But this process of learning the past tense verb is your biggest key to learning vocab quickly. Once we learn some morphological patterns, how to make the doer, how to make the object of a verb, how to make, there's different types of words that we're all going to refer back to this word in order to derive them. We talked a little bit about that when it came to waqifun and jalisun, the two adjectives that we had learned, sitting and standing. In order to make that, I basically take the verb and I add an alif and I switch this to a kasra, and this becomes a tanween with a dhamma. Dhahibun, a lever, if you will, or a goer, right? Kharijun, a lever, right? But that's just an extra bonus, extra credit for people who are interested. Okay, good. So the question relates, and I'm going to use your example, Masarrat, because it's an excellent example. Going to, where are we? Yes, here. Look at our two types of sentences. And guess what? There's no third type of sentence. So you already know jumla ismiya. Now, today you're learning jumla fi'liya. And there's literally no third type of sentence. So everything else is just little wrinkles, little flourishes, little bells and whistles that you can put on your sentences. But once you have these two patterns, these two formulae in your mind, then everything else is easy, inshallah. With the jumla ismiya, we began with the ism. This was called a nominal sentence. It begins with an ism, which loosely translates to noun, not always. With a jumla fi'liya, it begins with a fi'l, which is a verb. Translates exactly to verb. What are the parts of a jumla fi'liya? There are three possible parts. Two of them are essential always. One of them, sometimes essential, sometimes not. The structure of a verbal sentence in Arabic is verb, then subject, then object. In linguistic circles, they identify languages very quickly by their syntax, abbreviated by these three letters. So they say English is an SVO language because the standard syntax of a sentence is subject, verb, object. I hit the ball. The jumla fi'liya in Arabic is VSO. Verb first, subject next, object last. Do we need an object? Not always. Not always. Just like in English, there are different types of verbs. There are transitive verbs, meaning trans from to carry over. The action that I'm doing carries over and affects something else, right? So in the example that Masarrat went, oh, I like the way you're thinking, Shahada family, but the question isn't, can I add something on? It is, do I have to add something on? So in Masarrat's example, خلق الله, is that a complete sentence? Allah created. It begs the question, what did Allah create? Maybe a more clear example, if we say, I hit, that's one that's even more unambiguously requires a verb. ضرب الإمام. ضرب إيش? What did he hit? Right? That's a transitive verb. It has to have an object. And so if that verb is used in an example, then that sentence has to have an object. Other verbs are intransitive. So technically speaking, he went is an intransitive verb. It doesn't have to have an object. We can put an object, we can put a prepositional phrase if we want to give more information. But as we saw in our conversation, we didn't have to. The whole sentence is kharaja. He went, or he left, or dhahaba, he went. Right? It is sufficient to be by itself, or like jalasa, jalisa, he sat. Right? So there are some verbs that are transitive and some verbs that are intransitive. Now, you could ask the question, and I would hope that you would. So why then, if in our example, let's go back to our example in the book, it said kharaj, kharaja. You say, wait a second. We only have a verb here. You said, Imam, you said that the verbal sentence, the jumla fi'liya, has to have a verb and it has to have a subject. Where is the subject? There are two types of subjects. There are two types of subjects. Sometimes the subject is explicit with a separate verb, a separate word, like in the Shahada family's example. ذهب محمد, Muhammad went. And sometimes it's implicit. ذهب, خرج, which means he went, he left. It's already conjugated. So the subject is hidden inside of the verb. Oh, very good, very good. I like that. I like the way you're thinking. Excellent. Due to conjugation. Okay, so we have only learned, say it family, we have only learned the conjugation for he. We have not learned the conjugation for she yet. Once we get there, we will learn that she has a separate conjugation involving an extra letter on the end. So kharaja becomes kharajat, which means she left. Right? In which case, I can tell that that is the subject because it's right there on the verb. I don't need hiya, kharajat hiya. Yes, it's permissible, it's correct Arabic to say that. It's actually emphasis. Say kharajat hiya. Man kharajat? Who left? She did. I want to add extra emphasis. But from a strictly bare bones perspective, what has to be there? No, this isn't even typical. It wouldn't be typical to use that. The typical sentence would be kharajat. She left. Or in our example here, kharajat. But that's an issue for conjugation, and we will get to conjugation soon, inshallah. Does that answer your question? So in the Shahada family's example, Muhammad went to the store. ذهب محمد إلى الدكان. إلى الدكان is not a necessary part of that sentence. ذهب محمد is a complete sentence. If we wanted to add extra information, yes, we can say إلا الدكان, just like we have in these two examples here. ذهب إلى المدير. ذهب إلى المرحاض. Right? So what's actually going on here is that just as Shahada family, I'll get to your question in 1 second. Just as when we had a Jumla Ismiya, we started with a Mubtada, and then we learned that the Khabar could also become a prepositional phrase, right? Al-Kitabu. Pardon my writing. Al-Maktabi. Okay. This whole thing as a unit was the Khabar, became the predicate. Okay, right? So just like that happened in the Jumla Ismiya, that also happens with the Jumla Fi'liya. So if we have ذهب إلى المدير, I have verb here, ذهب. The subject is hidden here inside of the verb because it's conjugated for he went. And then this, all of this as a unit, this prepositional phrase is actually also my object. It's not an essential object, doesn't have to be there to be complete sentence, but it is there. Just like this became khabar, this can also become the entire object, if that makes sense. The next question, when you say subject in a verbal sentence, is that mubtada? To clarify my question, yes. Very good, okay. So we have a problem between English and Arabic grammar, okay? Our problem is this. In English, there is no verbal sentence, okay? There is no jumla fi'liya. And so, every sentence in English requires a verb. What we call the doer of that verb is we call it a subject. We don't usually call it the doer, right? Now, in Arabic, the subject, the mubtada, is strictly for jumla ismiya. There is no mubtada in a jumla fi'liya. The parts are different. What we would say is going on in English is verb, subject, object, but this subject does not translate to mubtada. It would be a better translation to probably say the doer of the verb, okay? So don't get confused between the Arabic grammatical terms and the English ones, right? In English, yes, we would call that the subject. We would say the subject comes after the verb. But mubtada is specific to jumla ismi. What we call these terms in Arabic, if you're wanting to learn to keep them straight, is we call them fi'l, which is verb, part one. Fa'il, which is the doer of the verb. And then maf'ul, which is the receiver of the verb. Those are, in Arabic grammatical terms, those are the three parts of this sentence: fi'l, fa'il, and maf'ul. I tried to introduce using the English terms because they're more familiar and quickly understood, but you're right, they are less accurate and precise. Technically, this is fi'l, the fa'il is hidden in the verb, and ila al-mudiri is the maf'ul. Excellent. Did I answer everyone's question? Yes. So just to circle back to Masarrat's example of خَلَقَ اللَّهُ الْأَرْضَ, okay? This is a good example of a, why don't I just do a whiteboard? Translate second to last sentence. You're talking about in the book, correct? وَأَيْنَ ذَهَبَ عَلِيٌّ, and where has Ali gone? We'll start here. We say أَيْنَ ذَهَبَ, or okay, أَيْنَ عَبَّاسِ. Where is Abbas? Muhammad says خَرَجَ. he left. He says, أين ذهب? Where did he go? ذهب إلى المدير. He went to the principal. وأين ذهب علي? And where did Ali go? ذهب إلى المرحاض. He went to the toilet. Yep. So you don't need to be as specific as is implied. Yes, exactly, Chad. So in this particular example, we have a conversation. And conversation always happens with context. We know when the teacher asks Aina Abbas, it's implied we understand that we're talking about Abbas. So if we really wanted to be sticklers, we could have said Kharaja Abbas. But it would be really weird, right? If you're talking with somebody, you say, where did Abbas go? Abbas went, Abbas left. Where did Abbas go? Abbas left, he went to the, and Abbas did this, and Abbas did that. Normally you would say he, or some other sort of abbreviation, contraction in order to reduce the amount of words that you have to speak. Well, the same happens here. It's understood that we're talking about Abbas. It's understood here we're talking about Abbas, and it's understood here that we're still talking about Abbas. And finally, here, we're still talking about Abbas. خرج عباس. أين ذهب عباس؟ ذهب عباس إلى المدير. Right? If you wanted to put it in there, you could. ذهب عباس إلى المدير. But it's implied because we've been talking about him this whole time. When it's no longer implied, we're changing who we're talking about. We have to mention it. وأين ذهب علي؟ ذهب إلى الملحاض. He went to the toilet. And just to, looks like we're pretty much out of time, but just to circle back to the example of Masarrat, she said, and this is a really, really good example and a perfect thing to end on. We have khalaqa, which means to create. Khalaqa is a past tense verb that means he created. Khalaqa Allahu al-arda. Aywa. That's what we're going for. This is a complete, wonderful jumla fi'liya with all of its parts on display for you. This is fixed. This is fixed. This. So let's break it down. We have fi'l. What are the three parts of a jumla fi'liya? Fi'l, fa'il, maf'ul. We could translate it as verb, doer of the verb, and object of the verb. Notice the ending here on Allah is a dhamma. Yes. Yes. The fa'il is marfu'. Just like your friends, the mubtada and the khabar, fa'il is also marfu'. It will always be marfu'. The doer of the verb, just like in our jumla ismiya, mubtada and khabar is always marfu'. And it will be represented in most words with a dhamma. Whereas, oh, what do we have over here? The maf'ul is what's called mansoob. It is the object, it is in the accusative case, as we would say in English grammar. Mansoob, and mansoob is represented by a fatha. Yes. So now we've covered 3 out of 4 possible grammatical cases. Look at that. And it's only what? We haven't even done 15 lessons. We know that dhamma represents the nominative case, marfu'. We know that kasra represents the genitive case, majroor. And now, due to our verbal sentences, we know that the fatha represents the accusative case, the object of a verb. This is just an introduction. We're well over time, but we will have lots of opportunity to practice this, inshallah. And there's nothing, I don't want to say there's nothing after that, but as far as sentence structure goes, you're done, right? You have your 2, everything else is just learning how to conjugate verbs, learning different prepositions that you can use, learning vocabulary, little sort of bells and whistles that you can add to your sentences. But as far as basic sentence structure goes, guess what? You have it. You have Jumla Ismiya, you know its parts, you know what grammatical case each of its parts have to be in. Now you know Jumla Fi'liya, you know its parts, and you know what each of its parts, what grammatical case it has to be in. Anybody? Any questions before we depart? I mean, what? Yeah. Yes, object is mansub. Mansub literally means the accusative case. The accusative case, yes. The subject, or better yet, the fa'il. Oh, remember, Musarrat, our verb is mabni. Ah, yeah. Our verb, our past tense verb is mabni, so it does not have any case. It does not have grammatical case. Whereas if we were to use a present tense verb, oh, yes, it would. But we'll see that when we get there. So we would, if you're breaking down grammatically the sentence, you would say mabniyun ala al-fatha. You say that it is undeclinable. How would you translate that? Upon its fatha. It's stuck there, basically. Does that make sense? Alhamdulillah. Okay. Fantastic work, everybody. I will see you next time, inshallah ta'ala. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.